Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Circular Economy Innovators Tour hosted by the Circular Economy Club in London. You're very welcome to join us on this Friday afternoon, which is very humid, very wet in certain places, and is the highlights before the football match that's coming up in a few hours' time. So for some of you anyway. I'm David Greenfield. I'm the organizer with a volunteer team for Circular Economy Club London, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of an insight into what we do in the Circular Economy Club and what we're going to be doing this afternoon. And it's nice to see so many faces that we haven't actually physically seen for a while on the camera. We've got a really exciting group of people joining us today, so I'm very excited that you're all here to see what's going on and some of the great stuff that's going on in London. So let me just open up my slide deck so you can see that. Jess, can you see that as I can only see you?
Yep.
Perfect. So it's 4 o'clock, it's Circular Economy Week, and this is what we're going to be doing. I'm going to give you an introduction to what's going on. I should say that thank you very much, Ehab. I will swap displays. Is that better, everybody? Yeah, okay, great. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what Circular Economy Club does and some of the activities that are going on. In terms of the process for today, if you could keep your microphones off and your cameras off while we're doing the presentations, that would be really helpful. And then I'm going to just introduce each of our innovators. So as you can see from our agenda here, we're going to 5 different innovative companies, and we're going to have a little video from them about what they do and how they do it, and then have a little bit of a discussion around what their ambitions, challenges, barriers, opportunities for becoming circular are. I'm just going to hand over hosting to Jessica so she can actually let people in while I'm doing this. Super. So very briefly, Circular Economy Club London. Many of you will have heard of us and know us quite well. We're one of 270 cities around the world that are actually running physical as well as virtual events. And you can see all of our hashtags and social media activities there. Please do socialize with us. We've got a really nice community on both Twitter and on Instagram, as well as Facebook and everything like that. We've been running events in the city now since 2016, 2017. And we like to ensure that we can get as many diverse people involved in understanding what circular economy is and why it's essential for trying to mitigate some of the challenges for both climate change, but also for net zero, and to introduce people to what circular is. I should say thank you very much to London for organising the Circular Economy Week London 2021. It's great to be a partner of that, and this is the 3rd year that we've been working with London on the Circular Economy Club Week. So our vision at a global level is we want cities to adopt circular economy model. It's quite a simple vision and something that is more challenging to deliver than the vision says. And we're working hopefully to supporting 40 cities worldwide to work towards ending landfill. At a global level, we have 3 main areas that we support. As we said, looking at cities, but we also work with universities and startups. And today is very much around startups that are now emerging and growing into businesses that are going to change the world. So I'm really excited by a lineup of businesses that we're going to talk to today. What the Circular Economy Club has always been about is supporting people to become more circular and giving them information. And one of the things that we launched last year was some training programs. So we have created something called the Circular Economy Institute. It offers bespoke online training packages, and you can go through different training programs and get yourself a circular economy trained certificate or a circular economy specialist certificate. We are offering discounts for Circular Economy Week. If you do want to explore that, get in touch and we'll see if we can get you a discount code. I've mentioned our volunteer team. This is they, all specialists in their own way in particular elements of circular economy. And it's a real pleasure of mine to be able to work with this really passionate group of people who bring so much to Circular Economy Club London. I couldn't do it without all of them. And this is a bit of a belated thank you because it was Volunteers Week last week. So thank you very much. So today, what are we up to? 3 years ago, we actually did a mapping event where we mapped what's going on in London in terms of circular economy. And that's available through an open source map. We're updating it. We did an event on Wednesday and we're adding to it from a fashion perspective. This gave us the idea 3 years ago to create a tour of some of the wonderful businesses that are on the Circle Line. And so we did a physical tour of the Circle Line and went to many different businesses at the time. This year, we're going to visit 5. And I've realized that my animation is going faster than me, which is always a danger. Last year, we went virtual and we connected to Colombia, and we had a couple of companies in Colombia, and we had some really interesting insights as to some of the challenges faced in Colombia that are actually the same as what we face in London, and that's a lot of it around behaviour change. So today, we're going around this Circle Line, starting off with Tower Hill, then moving on to Temple, then to Victoria, Wood Lane, and finishing in Liverpool Street. Now, some of the organisations are not actually at those stations, but are very close. So I'm taking poetic licenses to their location. And we're going to start with Biome. We're going to Tower Hill, and Ehab, I do hope that this video works. So I'm going to introduce Biome via video and then Ehab.
Biome is a multi-award-winning research and development-led company, and we are revolutionizing the construction industry. We're bringing nature-inspired design, development, construction systems, and a range of research and services. And we've built an incredible team to drive this bio-revolution in a wonderful new home here in London.
We truly believe in the genius of nature. And we think that there is no better place to look for inspiration and knowledge than the natural world. Nature has resolved many challenges over billions of years of evolution and holds answers to all the problems that we face today.
Environmental, economic and social justice are at the very core of our biomimetic approach, and the principle of equity is embedded within every aspect of our operations. We are expanding circularity beyond the production and flow of materials into other parts of the economy.
It's a really exciting time here at Biome. We're working with a range of different partners. Commercially speaking, we've been working with big multinationals to bring about a more circular approach by consulting with them on how they can incorporate their waste into our materials, and that's having a really big impact. So with these mycelium insulation panels, we're using agricultural waste, industrial waste, any organic biomass. And in that sense, it's actually a regenerative process because we're locking in that carbon and sequestering it.
By using natural organisms such as fungi, we are able to create non-malignant products that can be reintroduced in our ecological cycles. Fungi have been around for about 2,400 million years and have been completely assimilated into our natural ecosystems. Therefore, the products that we are able to create using these organisms can be eventually fed back into the ecosystems or reused into our nature-based processes.
While most of our mycelium panels can be described as macro, a lot of our work starts here in the R&D lab on the micro scale. So fungi are incredibly good at breaking things down. I don't think there's anything in the world that some kind of fungus wouldn't be able to break down. And at the moment we're trying to harness these capabilities specifically for plastic biodegradation and plastic remediation. So the dream is to replace all of that plastic waste with mushrooms and fungi and mycelium.
At Biome we do quite a few live projects, and this is collaborations with other companies, and these projects allow for us to explore different methods and processes in how to create these mycelial composites. It's a really great opportunity to collect data.
I love working at the intersection between nature and technology, and what I do here at Biome is integrate artificial intelligence and automation into both our production and research and development.
Our organic refuse biocompound or orb material is a perfect example of how nature fabricates, where you take problematic, troublesome organic waste streams that are otherwise tricky and expensive for industries to dispose of, and you combine them with our unique organic binder, and suddenly you have a material that recognises itself from nature.
We're able to transform the way that nature builds her materials into industrial systems, and we're not only creating the materials, but we're really focusing on the systems, the processes and the machinery that will enable us to create this impact at scale.
We all share a common drive and a responsibility that the types of products that we make, we are responsible for the impact it has both on people's welfare and also on our planet. And we're concerned as well about not just our generation, but generations to come. The other thing is the quality that we deliver and that we meet industry standards. We are working with the British Board of Agrimont. What we're finding is we are outperforming market-leading alternatives.
Brilliant. So, thank you very much, Biome. That was a fascinatingly insightful video. And Ehab, I know that that's really big news for you at Biome, because this time last year we were talking to you from a container over in West London.
Absolutely. It's been quite a journey, and it still feels a little bit surreal. We still have to pinch ourselves and actually find it difficult to believe that this is happening. So it's really amazing. We've moved quite a long way from where we were. We were definitely in 4 shipping containers in Shepherd's Bush the last time we did this tour. We also had some co-working spaces, and to be able to bring it all together in one Biome home in London has been an incredible journey. So yeah, we're very proud and still finding it a little bit surreal.
And tell people about, not the exact details, but what your new facility is.
Well, it's where all of our R&D takes place. So we used to have access to different facilities around London, some in shipping containers, some at universities. And what we did is we brought it all together. So we've got a workshop for all kinds of material processing and product development. We've got a design studio. We've got labs for material testing, for very kind of intense scientific research that, you know, we can only really do in universities, but we worked really hard on replicating all of the kinds of top of the range machinery that enables us to do that in-house. And we've also got incubation spaces to grow our mycelium and production space as well as offices. So it kind of brings together everything that we do in one place under one roof. And all of our products will be developed in London, trialed on a small scale, and then sent out to our biomanufacturing facilities or biomills for larger scale production.
Brilliant. And tell us a little bit about the journey you've been on, because I believe that Biome have got a birthday coming up next month.
Yes, yeah, we are about a month away. or actually less than that. It's a couple of weeks away from turning 5 years old, which is a major milestone for any startup. And yeah, it's kind of a special moment for us because we really tried to get as far as we could with the little resources that we had, and to make it to our 5-year point with the team that we've got aboard and with the relationships that we've built within industry is really great. But it's been incredibly challenging. There's a really kind of rigorous accreditation process that you have to go through to launch construction products, and that alone has taken us over 2 years and a lot of expenses and resources, and just in understanding what the accreditation process is. So we've had incredible people support us, advisors and organizations support us along the way to help us get to where we are today. And we definitely wouldn't have been able to make it this far without their guidance.
Give us an example of some of those collaborators, because I know you've worked with a number of different people. Some are on the call today.
Yes, yeah. So we are working with a variety of different organizations in terms of, for different reasons. We are consulting one of the largest property developers in the UK at the moment to scope out the waste streams and integrate them into our production processes. We've also worked with some tech giants in terms of generating a circular approach within their organizations. So through our materials, through our waste collection services, they're able to actually become much more of a circular organization. And we're also engaged at the moment with some fashion industry players who are wanting to look at reimagining the retail space with our materials, but also use the waste clothing as a feedstock for our materials. So it's very kind of broad in terms of the sectors and the organizations that we work with.
Brilliant. We've got a question from Perver on the chat. What was your eureka moment?
Which one? We've had quite a few. I think the first one really was very early stage. I was doing a lot of research when I was doing my master's at Brunel University into the construction industry, and I couldn't quite believe the amount of waste that was coming out of the industry and how it was being treated. So I decided to develop a construction system through which you change your perceptions around it, around the way that we treat buildings and materials. And whilst I was developing it, I found it really difficult to create a truly circular construction system. And my eureka moment was when I dove really deep into the molecular makeup of carbon and the way that carbon molecules bond to one another. And that's kind of the beauty of biomimicry and nature-inspired design. There are so many incredible innovations all around us, but we just need to know where to look. So I guess that was our first eureka moment, and that's when we developed our construction system, Trianguli.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ihab. And one final question, then we're going to move on to our second stop. Champions. How have you managed to utilize champions on your 5-year journey?
That's a really great question, because believe it or not, champions are the ones that really make things move and change within major organizations and economic systems. What we've done usually when we work with really large organizations is we identify a champion with a lot of power within that organization, and then we really focus all of our efforts on working with them and nurturing them, and they also do the same back, because at the end of the day, we both want to work towards that circular future. And understanding where those champions are and making sure that those champions are able to actually progress your innovation and their ambitions collectively with you is a really critical thing to do as a startup that's growing, because they then enable you to make that first step with that organization, which creates a case study for other organizations to take up your technology, and the doors start to open. So I would say champions are really critical in learning how to identify them. And they usually just come to you if you're out there in the world and sharing your story. Those champions will find you and just make sure that you appreciate how they can be really transformational for you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ihab. We're going to let you jump off the tube for the moment, and we'll see you back here at about 5:05. And we're going to go on to our second stop, but can I just ask the audience, if you want to, please do share in the chat who you are and what you're up to. This is very much about being a social event today. So I'm now going to move on to our second stop. I have to get this in the right order to make sure I share the screen. And here we go. Right. And as I said, any questions that you want to put into the chat, we'll ask through the activity. Right, which screen can you see? Is it the proper screen or the notes screen? Fine, thank you. So I'm really delighted that we've got Emily from Oddbox. I'm going to listen to Oddbox.
Did you know that the average Briton eats roughly 130 kilos of potatoes each year? It all starts here at the farm. The land is prepped, the seeds are sown, then the crop is watered and looked after for at least 3 months. And only after that the potatoes are ready to be harvested. They're taken to the warehouse to be graded according to the supermarket order. Are they too large? Too small? Too odd? Too many? The ones that don't make it get rejected. But it doesn't have to be like this. We, at Oddbox, rescue all of the odd and surplus fruit and veg that were rejected directly from the farm, reducing unnecessary waste and meaning potatoes end up here, and not here. Oddbox. Fruit and veg that makes a difference.
Brilliant. So, Emily, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the panel. If I can find you. I'm just going to unshare my screen.
David, I'm here.
Yeah, there we go. Brilliant. Thank you. I've got to, I'm just trying to stop the screen share for some reason. I don't know where that's gone to. What can everybody, there we go. That's fine. Hello. Thank you and welcome to the Circular Economy Tour. It's really lovely to meet you virtually. I haven't met you personally before. We are very inspired by what you do at Oddbox. I'm going to ask one of the questions that I asked Ehab, which came from the audience actually. What inspired you? I think we can probably guess, but what inspired you to create Oddbox?
Yeah, so actually, my background is not at all in fresh produce, and I didn't know too much about food waste before we started Oddbox. The idea came from going on holiday in Portugal, and there you shop at the local market, and you get amazingly tasty produce. Which so we were seeing these ugly tomatoes, which were amazing, and then you come back to the UK. And you go to your supermarket and you can't find this kind of produce. Everything is packaged, everything looks perfect, but it doesn't actually really taste of anything. And that's kind of what started a bit of research into what was happening in the produce supply chain and why there was such a difference in the produce that we were getting in the UK and what was actually happening to the produce which didn't look perfect. And that's when we came across the issue of food waste, the fact that a third of the food we produce actually never reaches our stores, and the amount of resources which go into growing food that we just throw away. And that kind of, we felt actually that we needed to do something about it. But initially, Hotbox started so we live in South London. We started Hotbox in South London with 20 customers, packing the boxes ourselves, delivering them to people in the neighborhood, flyering our neighbors and getting friends to sign up to Hotbox, and it actually grew from there. So we never thought we would be where we are today.
Brilliant. And I know you've grown because I'm down in Brighton and we get Hotbox in Brighton, and very, very pleased with it. We are as well. It's great, and pleased to explore it. Give us a couple of the lessons that you've learned, because I think you're 3 to 4 years old now, aren't you?
We just crossed the 5-year mark, actually.
Oh, brilliant. Wow, there we are.
And so I guess one of the big lesson, which is very relevant to the topic of circular economy, is that for us, it's always been how do we bring sustainability into our business model so that we don't have to choose between doing the right thing and being profitable. And so for us, it's always been, in some ways, the bigger we grow, the more impact we can have, but we also wanted to make sure that we consider the impact that we have as a business. And I'll give a couple of examples. So we're all about tackling food waste. We didn't want to create any waste ourselves, because the produce that we rescue don't necessarily have the right, the same size or shape. Then sometimes we get huge aubergines, sometimes small ones. And so in terms of packing, that makes it, packing and ordering, it makes it complicated. And so the way we solve that is that from the start, we've been working with charities. And in the video, it was at the very start, we used to leave any surplus we had in the people's fridge. Now we work with City Harvest and the Felix Foundation, and they come and pick up any surplus that we have and redistribute to food banks and soup kitchen. And so it's good because in some ways nothing gets wasted, but it's also good financially for us, because that means we don't have to pay the waste collector to collect produce, which then will end up going to the bin. So it's good on both sides, and that's always what we've tried to do in terms of it needs to make sense on an environmental basis, but also on a financial basis, and that's where actually it means there's less of a compromise between the two. And I'll give maybe another example that so we deliver, so for people who get Hotbox, you would know that we deliver overnight. So the box pops up on your doorstep, and it's like Christmas every week when you open your door. The reason we do that is because last mile is quite expensive, but also actually that means that our vans are on the road for less time. So they pollute less because there's less traffic at night. So it kind of, again, made sense on both aspects.
Brilliant.
And ideally, we would want to deliver with electric vans. It's just really expensive right now. So it's in terms of our commitment to net zero, moving to electric vehicle is one of our commitments. It's just not something that we're able to do right now. So we've kind of found a halfway of trying to do something which is slightly better, but we know we're not there yet.
No, I run Tech Back with a number of different people, and we've got an electric van, but it's only got a range of about 45 miles. And when it's full,
that's a challenge.
And when it's full and it's going up a hill, it's even worse. So I do understand where you're coming from. Final question for you, and again, you've been around now for 5 years. Have you had any champions that have really leapt out and pushed you forward? And how do you go about finding them? And actually, Natalie's asked a quick question. When you're going to Northamptonshire?
So we're looking at so we expanded recently to part of the Midlands, Wales, and the Southwest. So that's on our plan to kind of increase our geographic expansion. So, but in terms of champions, I would say it's our community. So we've always had a lot of our community has been our champions. And so we've had, we did the crowdfunding campaign 3 years ago. half of the investors were already Outbox customers who made kind of small and big investments. And for us, it's even more special. We've had influencers who actually shared about Outbox for free, and we didn't even know that they were talking about Outbox until we kind of realized that realized that they had quite a big influencing community and noticed it. So it's always been more kind of community based. Then we haven't had, I would say, kind of really big champions, though we have celebrities who are Outbox customers.
Brilliant. Well, Emily, I speak on many of us, but personally as well. We love what you're doing, and it's addressing a huge problem that I've been talking about, food waste, for 20 years. So well done on getting it set up, and we look forward to hearing you expanding elsewhere, and we look forward to speaking to you a bit more on the panel and a bit later. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, David.
Okay, now we're going on to stop number 3 of our wild tour of circular economy innovators, and we're going to one that I know I've worked with many of them actually, which is great. But Library of Things, many of you will have heard of the Library of Things. We're going to listen to them, but before we do, I've just got to turn the volume up because I think that your video was a little bit quiet, Emma. But here we go. Let's listen to the Library of Things.
Welcome to Upper Nord Library Hub in Crystal Palace, the home of Crystal Palace Library of Things. This was Library of Things' first location to open in a library after our pilot in West Norwood. In these lockers, you can find the stars of the show, The Things. In every kiosk, you can borrow up to 50 useful and joyful things, from tea urns to drills to projectors, bread makers and speakers. It's really easy to use. You simply book the thing you want to borrow for the dates you want on our website, then pop down to your local Library of Things to collect it. The things come with all the parts and consumables you need to use it: cleaning tablets for the carpet cleaner, sandpaper for the sander, and pegs for the tent, which is shown being collected here. We partner with manufacturers to source the things to guarantee good quality. They need to be, as after all they're being shared by lots of people. This tent is from the North Face, our DIY tools are from Bosch, cleaning things from Karcher and gardening things from Stihl. Here's a little look at our newest location, Hackney Wick, which you can find at the Baths, Old Public Baths, which is why it says men above the door. This was when our Thing technicians Jamie and John were still getting it ready for the launch earlier this week. The kiosks in our new locations work a little bit different to Crystal Palace. Instead of getting a code, you simply press a button and the locker pops open like magic. Borrow things for your adventures like Latoya did when she borrowed the speaker to keep a group she was taking on a trip entertained, or your home like Catherine when, after nearly slipping over in her garden, realised it needed a good clean and borrowed the pressure washer to avoid any more potential accidents. After all, why buy when you can borrow?
Brilliant. And welcome, Emma. Lovely to see you, and I'm going to try spotlighting you so everybody else should be able to see you rather than me, which is probably more beneficial for them. Emma, you guys are nearly 5 years old as well, aren't you?
We are. It must be the magic number.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were a little bit older in terms of when we very first got started as a group of friends and neighbours. That was 2014, but that was a really low scale test in our local library. But yeah, about 5 years old, kind of working properly on it.
And you've had quite a journey, because you started off in a container as well.
Yes, we did. In fact, I visited Biome's containers as well, and I think we talked about taking over the world with some shipping containers at the time. But it turns out it's not the best model for us to make it accessible to as many people as possible. So we've moved towards a partnership model, working with local spaces.
Tell us a bit about the spaces, because you're called the Library of Things and you work with a lot of libraries, but you're now in I was just about to say it looked like a toilet block, but I'm glad it was clarified that it was an old baths.
Yeah, I mean, nothing, yeah, not yet in public toilets. But mostly our spaces are popular high street locations that are a 10 to 15-minute walk to, you know, a few thousand residents. So somewhere nearby and local to you that makes it really convenient for you to pop in and pick up the things you want to borrow. And so typically we're partnering at the moment with, well, the space you saw in Crystal Palace is a library, but it's actually an independently run community library. So in there's also a cafe and co-working space and a book library, and soon to be in other high street libraries working in partnership with councils. But then venues like the Baths that you saw in Hackney Wick are independent spaces that are open, you know, Monday to Sunday often, and so give good accessibility and have space to do skills programs, so DIY skills classes and repair parties alongside kiosks too. So we're not too picky, just places that people like to go to.
Brilliant. And picking up your lessons learned, I can say that you're probably one of the older groups now then. You must have had a huge amount of lessons learned over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, I don't know how many I can fit in, but a lot of lessons learned. And I think maybe an obvious one is the things themselves. So when we first started, we only had a few £100, and it seemed sensible to source donated items from our members. So you would donate an old drill, you get a membership card, you could borrow other things. But that was actually the biggest barrier to creating a good experience for people, because they're not things that people want to borrow. And actually, as a small organization running this service, if you have 400 different products and 5 different types of drill, you kind of balloon the amount of work you have to do in terms of managing a good quality experience. So the item repairs and the you know, keeping them in good order. So one of the main shifts we made was part of our partnership approach isn't just with local spaces, but also with product manufacturers and others that I can talk to. But in terms of our product manufacturers, you saw there a Bosch drill, for example. And so we now source the best quality products we can find that are actually designed to be used 1,000 times a year, because what we found was that cheap things or old things sometimes break after a few uses. And so for us, ultimately, this is something that's going to get people borrowing rather than buying. It needs to be a superior experience in terms of the product.
So you're addressing a couple of circular economy themes. You're moving to a renting leasing model, but you're also designing for longevity as well. So tick, tick, well done. So champions, tell us some of your champions and how they've actually helped you moving forward. Because what I'm hoping is that some of our audience are 5 years behind you, thinking about interesting ideas and want to know how they might become the library of things, the odd box, the biome, the pie factory, or the Nopla of the future.
I think our champions are our community of partners. So our community of borrowers, obviously, these are people who are trying something completely new. And then I suppose more of the behind the scenes community is our partners. So I've mentioned local spaces who provide a welcoming home for our borrowing kiosks. I've mentioned the manufacturers of products. So we wouldn't be able to provide such a good experience unless we had those strategic partnerships. And often it's people who are going out of their way in their day job to reach out and say, we really want to work with you, and putting their neck on the line in their organizations to really champion us and take us to their board. And you know, they don't need to do that. And other partners, I think, just worth mentioning is community network. So we get approached by a lot of incredibly passionate, motivated, generally volunteers who are keen to improve their local areas and reach out and put a lot of time and energy into inviting us into work in a new neighborhood with them. And funders. So, you know, it's expensive to do these kind of services because they're breaking norms and need to be well funded. And so at a local level, we work with commissioners of impact, so often local authorities who want to support low waste neighborhoods and community-led activities. And then in terms of building our own technology, our own funders who have enabled us to build that that good user experience that you just saw in the video, so building technology, for example, we wouldn't be able to do it without them. Brilliant. Well, it's been fascinating, and really good luck with your new swimming pool library of things. And I know that you've got lots of plans for future. So we'll speak to you in about 20 minutes on the panel. And thank you very much. I'm going to remove you from the spotlight and then go back to sharing the screen and invite Simon Evans to join us in a second. But firstly, we're going to hear from Simon and from Nick Marks what the Pi Factory is.
I'm Nick Marks, I'm the founder of EcoBooth. I set up EcoBooth to develop a better way of doing things, better for people and better for the planet. EcoBooth take problem plastic that would otherwise end up in landfill, be used for energy recovery, or worse still, end up in somewhere like our oceans. We use it as a base material to design and produce new things.
Surface Against Sewage has been working on plastic pollution for well over a decade now. We work right from the beachfront right through to the front benches of Parliament, where we call for new legislation, ambitious policy that can really stop the flow of plastics into the ocean.
We've come to Cornwall as part of a new project with Surface Against Sewage to develop a furniture range that is made exclusively from ocean plastic that's been collected on UK beaches.
With my colleagues at SAS, you know, we get all sorts of inquiries, and an EcoBooth was one of those that stood out. That's a cotton bud stick that would have come out of the sewer system, really dealing with some of the plastic that is hard to deal with from the beachfront and turning it into something that has another life.
The profits from the project go back to Surface Against Sewage to fund further clean-up operations.
They look like the experience that sort of people see on the beach, so you can really see the multicoloured kaleidoscope of colours you'll see on the tide line. So it's like really cool stuff and actually really comfortable to sit on.
A project like this is every reason that I set up EcoBooth, working with fantastic people that share the same values and beliefs, developing something that will genuinely better our planet for generations to come.
So that's EcoBooth, also known as the Pi Factory. And Simon, if you'd like to join me on screen, that would be super. I'm going to spotlight you if I can. Tell us firstly, while I'm doing that, EcoBooth to Pi Factory. Why and what does Pi Factory mean?
Yes, sorry for making it confusing and rebranding in between joining this call, pretty much. Nick, the founder, as you saw there, set up EcoBooth 3 years ago now, I guess, in a response to an industry he'd worked in for a long time, which is incredibly linear, which is the events industry, which I had no real idea was such a huge contributor to waste globally. And as I say, the very definition of linear, you build something for a day, it lives for a day, people see it, then it goes. It's normally plastic, it's normally Fomax. Nick wanted to change that, so he brought in sustainability experts like myself, and we set about finding a better way to do live events. We were always kind of moving to a different area, moving away from events. People were asking us to do furniture, pop-up shops, windows on Regent Street, working with some big brands around the world. So we were due a rebrand anyway. Thankfully, COVID really helped hurry that decision by destroying the world of live events completely. So we are now a Pi Factory, which stands for Positive Impact Experiences. We don't sell pies, sadly, even though everybody asks for some. And we've kind of come back bigger and better, really. We now offer a wider range of materials, so not just plastic. We're working with a lot of other regenerative materials. We have a materials library upstairs, which anyone is welcome to come and visit. We have a plethora of 3D printers, plastic presses, and our community gardens that is set up to bring in young people as a space to work for free, young designers, graduates, and be the kind of next generation of kind of circular champions, because we want to be part of that community, and we want to, well, to be selfish about it, we want them to discover new things for us as well. So it's good to have that opportunity. So Pie Factory is EcoBooth rebranded, bigger and better is the idea.
Brilliant. And it's an interesting one. I know I've been involved in a couple of events, and we actually did an event in Amsterdam a couple of years ago called Waste Build, where we didn't have any carpets at all. And in fact, I ran a circular economy club stand with zero equipment. I turned up, and myself and Anna, who's on the call as well, went skip diving and created a stand out of the stuff that was thrown away at the event. I know it's big business for the organisers, particularly a lot of the on-selling of people. You must have had a lot of barriers from the events industry on this.
Yes, yeah, that's a very polite way of putting it. We got a lot of kickback from a very big, or it's a huge industry with a lot of big players in it. I'm previously a sustainability consultant for the last 13 years, so I've worked with a lot of different industries and sectors. And events is a laggard, to put it kindly, and they needed the kick that EcoBooth and Pie Factory have given them, because we are punching well above our weight and working with some of the world's biggest brands, because there is such a demand for doing this better now. When you've got the likes of kind of really big brands, progressive brands, who are turning up to these events because they have to, and there's no option other than these kind of fairly crap linear solutions. There was a real gap in the market, and yes, as you say, lots of barriers, but also lots of people wanting to work with us. So we could just kind of say, look, we can jump over these barriers by providing a better solution.
And so tell us about some of those champions then. What have they done that's enabled you to move forward?
Yeah, well, we have our own term for in-brand champions. We call them rebellious leaders. They're normally the people from the mid to higher range that come in to see EcoBooth and now Pie Factory, and they're not necessarily the CEOs, but they will knock down the door of the CEO to say, look, we need to work with these guys. And those rebellious leaders are some of the bigger brands, PA Consulting, Aberdeen Standard from the early days, really helped champion us and push us to the forefront. Other kind of champions we have are people like the B Corp community. I'm the co-chair of the B Corp Circular Economy Working Group, which has been wonderful, a really good network, and we learn so much from other organisations like the wonderful people who've already spoken today, but the wider B Corp community, and everyone's really keen to help each other and push each other forward. So yeah, we're not short of champions, which is a really lucky place to be.
I think that's the really nice thing about the circular economy community, the B Corp community. It's a community, and there is an element of competitiveness, but there's actually also a huge amount of we want to do the right thing, and the right thing is saving the planet, stopping plastic, etc., etc. And that I think comes across from the work you've got with SAS. And just give people an insight to how that relationship came forward.
I think the ocean plastic was a very big thing in the not too distant past, still is. It really kind of caught the zeitgeist, and everybody was interested in it. Everybody was appalled by it. A lot of the brands we worked with, even though they were nothing to do with ocean plastic, wanted to work with ocean plastic and have staff days out and cleanup events. And it was a really good thing for a lot of brands to be involved with. And we thought, well, we need to be involved with a charity that is at the forefront of this. I already knew of, I used to, in a previous role, work with Lucy Siegel, who is a big champion ambassador for Surfers Against Sewage. She introduced us to Hugo down in Cornwall, and we thought, we've got to go and see these guys. It was lovely going down and making that video and seeing the incredible work they do. They had their plastic-free awards last night, actually. And yeah, they're a wonderful champion and ambassadorial group. I'm sure you all saw the paddle out they did at G7 last week with 1,000 1,000+ people in the sea waving at world leaders saying, look, sort this ocean that we're out in. They're a wonderful organisation and one we're very proud to partner with for sure.
Brilliant. And I should say congratulations, because I think you won an award last night, didn't you?
We did. And that was a lovely surprise to have. Nice at the end of a very difficult year.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Really insightful and really helpful. And we look forward to you on the panel in a couple of minutes, which means that we can go on to our final stop, which is Pierre Pesilier from Notpla. Now, they've had a change of name as well in the past. So, Pierre, I know you're here because I let you into the room a few minutes ago. So we'll just play the video quickly, and then I'll come and speak to you in a second.
My name is Rodrigo Garcia. I'm one of the co-founders of Skipping Rocks Lab. We try to make plastic packaging disappear. We work together with entrepreneurs, scientists, engineers to try to find new natural solutions that could be an alternative for single-use plastic. We started back in 2014, and we were trying to find alternatives for plastic and try to get inspiration from nature. So we were looking at how nature tried to contain liquids on different ways. The main aim of Skipping Rocks Lab is to help other companies that at the moment use plastic packaging to package their products in natural materials that can disappear quickly. Our first product is called Ojo. It's a membrane made of seaweed that can encapsulate water or any kind of liquid. It's biodegradable, but at the same time it's edible. Cheers.
We're one of the winners of the Plastics Research and Innovation Fund. We were notified in September and started our project in December, and it's still ongoing. We applied with our partner Just Eat, who are helping us trial our product in the real world. The innovation funding we've received has single-handedly enabled us to hire 3 new members of staff that we otherwise wouldn't have hired. This means that we can progress things much more quickly. So we should hope to see a new version of our machine technology and new versions of our sachets appearing within the next 6 months, rather than 12 months that it might have otherwise taken. Ultimately, innovation requires both ingenuity but also getting to market quickly, and it's that speed that the extra funding has really helped us with. But we hope to now move on to lining cardboard boxes that will be used for takeaway packaging, and one day to producing thin films that might be used in replacement of cling film, or nets to put in fruits, and so many other things. So this is just a start for us.
Brilliant. Pierre, I can see you watching that and see you going, that's quite an old video. And I chose that one because I wanted people to see the journey. You've had 2 name changes since you originally started, and you started off as Skipping Rocks Lab and then went to Uhu, and now you're at Notpla. you probably look back at that and go, actually, that was, I think, 3.5 years ago, that video. A lot's changed since then, hasn't it?
Yeah. And like now there's like same people with big beards or long hair, so it's quite funny.
Tell us a little bit about that journey though, because it's been we've had a few companies that's 5 years old. You're 7 years old as well, same age as the Library of Things, and I think this is the really exciting thing for me. I've watched most of these businesses grow from a nice little project into something that's really now transformational. Tell us about some of the lessons you've learned on that journey. And one of the reasons why I wanted that video to be highlighted is because you've done a lot working with research bodies and getting research funding, particularly Innovate UK.
Yeah, so I think like it's an ongoing journey, and there's still plenty to do. And I hope that like in a year's time, I watch in the video that we're doing today, I'm like, wow, like lots has happened. But I think overall, it's been super exciting for us to see quite a lot of kind of like trends aligning with what we're trying to do, which has helped us in the journey to kind of like grow faster, get partners on board. You're talking about like some of those champions, but already back then mentioning that Just Eat was such an enabler. Today we're launching our takeaway box with them, and it's super exciting to like bring a plastic-free kind of like takeaway food service packaging with such a big player that can give us huge offtake agreements and really kind of like help us get noticed as a small player in the packaging world. So I think it's about kind of like it's been about like fostering some of those early relationships so that they kind of like turn into powerful kind of like long-term relationships. I think as startups, it's like we always feel that there's so much more we could be doing, and then like with a new funding, you're jumping to that next level that you were imagining, and then you realize that actually there is still so much more you could be doing. So I think that now we are about 40 in the team. Back then on that video, we were probably like 12. And I still feel that like there is so much that needs to be done. So I think it's showing the size of the problem and like how far we need to push. But it's also super exciting to see like measurable progress, even if like there is still some of those things have long cycle R&D kind of like challenges that aren't going to be solved as quickly as maybe all the kind of like digital tech we read about on like newspapers of like this kind of like from funding to kind of like global domination in 3 years. That's not happening in like manufacturing physical products, but still there's like measurable kind of like progress that is happening. So it's quite exciting. And I think it's also like like going through a few waves of kind of like of challenges. COVID has been one of them, and like getting through the other side, like still there, still able to kind of like work on accomplishing this vision. I think it's nice to see that we can weather through a few more of those challenges as we continue to grow.
And it's been fascinating watching you grow over the last few years. And you had a number of partners that were in your first video, not least Just Eat. And it's similar to a question I asked the Pie Factory actually, and I know Biome are doing a similar thing. What I can see is that you're working with some big brands to try and disrupt their existing model. That's not an easy thing to do, but how does that come about? Is it a chance conversation? Is it a presentation they've seen? Is it you knocking on their door for 10 weeks going, let me in?
I think it's always unknown what's going to be the kind of like the factor that gets someone to kind of like make one of these things happen. But I think you need a mix of all of the above, like definitely persistence. I think in our case, one of the things that has been very kind of like an invaluable asset is that with our first product managed to get quite a lot of attention and kind of like grabbing people's kind of like attention on the problem, but also getting them excited about like unconventional solutions. It's not all about recycling. It's not all about kind of like moving to deposit schemes or whatever it is. There are like other ways, and like people I think got on board with that. And I think that because people are more and more calling out brands on like how kind of like little they're doing or how far they are from their kind of like expectations as consumers. I think that like that's making it a lot easier for us to say, okay, you want to do something about it, here's how we would approach it, here's what we would do. I think there's like still a huge amount of kind of like discussions that don't lead to a strong relationship. So it's not like there's not like a magic formula that has worked again. But I think that when there's true kind of like high level kind of like commitments to solving the problem rather than just kind of like making a quick kind of like activation about it, and there is someone personally that believes in it and kind of like champions it internally, there's good chance that it happens. And I think the last thing that like does help a lot is finding partners that are non-competitive. And I think, for example, Just Eat is a really interesting example because they are like a purely kind of like digital platform. They have no interest in kind of like any of our IP or materials or machines or anything like this. So it makes it so much easier from a legal perspective to just crack on and like see what happens. Whereas you approach Nestle or like PepsiCo and they're like, okay, we're gonna have to ring fence everything that we do. We have to, so it just gets like harder. And then like you just need like a lot of goodwill on legal kind of like departments to do things at the level of like involvement that we need at the beginning of a project of doing something really like no strings attached.
Which is it's fascinating to hear that. And I think we could probably carry on for another 10, 20, 30 minutes quite easily. What I am going to do, though, I'm going to try and keep to time, which is very unusual for me, those of you that know me. And I'm going to invite the other panelists now to join us. And we're going to just bring everybody back in and start exploring what makes a circular business. And I'd like to introduce to the panel, Pauline Metivier, who's head of business. And Pauline, I'll let you give your full title, but you're now leading a lot of the work in Re-London. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then just give us a quick answer to what makes a business circular.
Great. Thanks, David. So I'm Pauline Metivier. I'm the head of business transformation and sector support at Re-London.
Short title.
Basically, I'm responsible for supporting businesses or some like specific sectors in London becoming more circular. And what makes a business circular? I think it's more, because there are like lots and lots of ways to do it, and I think that's what I've shown, all those, like presentation. But it's more about how you consider the stuff in general and the fact that you keep the value of stuff as long as possible in the loop. So it's more a way of thinking it. Well, obviously you have like the 5 business models, etc. But I think it's more a way to approach, like a new way to approach how we consider stuff.
Which I think that last bit that you just said in terms of it's a new approach. Pierre mentioned it, Emily mentioned it, Ehab mentioned it. So I think everybody mentioned it. For me, circular economy is very much around, it's an element of behavior change, but it's embracing a new approach. And Ehab, I know you're pushing the boundaries on a very, very static and not really a market that's wanting to change, but how are you engaging and making people understand what circular is?
I think that's a really great question, David, especially within the construction industry. In terms of the first step in doing that, one of the really important things is not to demonize and to appreciate how we got where we are today. And when you start from that place, you understand that it's a matter of perception change that needs to happen, and you need to take people along with you on that journey. So in the initial stages, you want to showcase the benefits of the circular economy. You want to show the cost savings, the carbon savings, and all of that. But also, more importantly, you want to highlight the kind of unintended or less obvious benefits that you can gain from the circular economy in the long term. And those are things like ensuring that the purpose is kind of built into the business mission, and things that make people feel more likely to kind of give their job 120%. And those then result in all kinds of wider benefits within an organization. So for us, we share our story from a place of this is how nature does it. We are nature, and we should continue to, follow on with that story. But we also are very considerate and appreciative of where the industry is at the moment. And for example, if you look at the petrochemical industry, 25 years from now has already been invested in oil and all kinds of projects, and convincing their shareholders to kind of make a U-turn and completely transform their process is a very challenging thing. So it's just being considerate of where the industry is, how things are the way they are today, and then working with the directors and the kind of decision makers within those organizations and supporting that change. And this is really where regulations becomes a really critical part of the transformation, because you can inspire, you can convince, you can support, but it's not until policy and regulation comes in that things really start to take shape.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, particularly in an industry such as the construction sector that's been affected by Grenfell in the last few years. I'll come back to you on that potentially in a minute, Ehab. But I just want to move over to Emily and just ask Emily, you're a B Corp. Does that mean that you feel circular because you're a B Corp, or because B Corp is much wider than circular?
B Corp is much wider than circular, and the reason why we decided to become a B Corp was, so there were a lot of things that we were already doing, so we actually didn't have to change a lot to our business model or our practices. We had to formalize some of them, but it's a real commitment to doing things in the right way. As part of a B Corp, it's not just a one-off assessment. You're evaluated every 3 years, and you've got a responsibility actually to improve on your score. So it's not a static assessment either. And that means that we've made changes in the way we incentivize people, in the way we measure things. So it's part of our key KPIs. We've got a bonus scheme which is partially linked to financial metrics, but also to improvement on our B Corp score. So it's kind of made sustainability and best practices, and it's all about governance, it's about diversity. So it's much broader than just circularity.
And do you therefore, as a business, do you define yourselves as circular, or do you define yourselves as sustainable, or pulling off much wider climate change activities, or do you not define yourselves?
I think we kind of use all of these terms in different kind of settings, and in some ways, when we talk about the way we operate, we say quite more often we're supply-led, and that's very different from how a lot of businesses are running, which is demand-led. And you would have seen there's so many new startups where you can get now anything delivered within not 30 minutes, but not 15 minutes, but 10 minutes. Yeah. Very soon we'll have things on our door even before we want them. So what we promote is a different way of consuming, which is a lot slower, which is a lot more mindful, which is based on what resources we have available. And I think that's a core element of circularity. It's starting from what's available and kind of utilizing what's there instead of creating new.
I think that's so important, that it's about managing the resources that we already have in our system without creating new ones. And yeah, excellent. Emma, can I ask you, and I just want to ask you a slightly different question, which is, you do deal a lot with members of the public that are looking for products as a service, ultimately what you're providing. do they actually recognize that as a circular service? Do they understand the term circular? And while you're thinking about that, to everybody watching and listening, please do put some questions in the chat if you'd like any of our panelists to answer them, and I'll try and get to them as we go through. But Emma, your members, your borrowers, are you circular to them?
I don't know if circular means a lot to the average person, if I'm honest. I think it's more we talk about with our partners, so the kind of business to business element of what we do. But to the average normal person, they'll use Library of Things because it's either better than an alternative, so it's more convenient than, say, trying to get hold of a neighbor or a friend and borrowing something and navigating how you're going to do that logistically. It's more affordable than buying it. So kind of basic, almost, transactional reasons. But we know that the net after kind of I need the thing, the reinforcing motivation consistently is an environmental motivation. So whether that's I'm trying to be kinder to the planet, or however an individual might frame that in their own mind, I don't think circular means a huge amount, but I think what our members recognize is that we're not a traditional business, and our currency in a way is trust, and our currency with them is trust. It's kind of reciprocal because they've got to bring the thing back, otherwise it doesn't work. But they trust in us that we're kind of standing against the consumerist machine, and we're doing that not just on the basic act of getting hold of a drill when you need it, but actually all the way through to our DNA as a company. And I think consumers, or I guess in a circular world, users, or whatever we call people who are using these services, expect more from business that isn't that is kind of protecting the planet and the community all the way through how they treat the members of our team or how we work with our partners. And I think people are really aware of that.
Yeah, which is great. And I know that when you first started out, and I'm sure this is the case now, but quite a lot of your borrowers and a lot of the storyline that you had was actually because you haven't actually got space for some of these items as well. Particularly given where your libraries are, they are quite densely populated areas, aren't they?
Yeah, so we're working in London at the moment, and we all live in tiny living spaces, and that I think that's another, as well as saving money and it's a convenient thing, it's another motivation is why would you have a carpet cleaner really in a flat? I've always wondered if I totaled up the amount of rent that my stuff should be paying is much more than I it's most of what the rent I pay is just to house my stuff. So yeah, I think
I can feel a project coming on already, Emma. I'm now going, oh, that sounds like a really good cost benefit analysis. How much space does my toaster take up? And actually it's so true. It's so true. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. I'm gonna jump onto Simon and ask him, because he's very strategically sitting in front of the Sustainable Development Goals, in case anybody doesn't know what they are. From your perspective, Simon, what does circular mean in relation to the SDGs?
Well, I mean, the SDGs have been a large part of what we do because, again, we work with a lot of multinational brands who are using the SDGs as a kind of framework for impact measurement. Obviously, the different SDGs are more appropriately used for certain brands on certain projects. Obviously, we're heavily involved with life underwater, life on land, and responsible resource use and consumption. These are the key bits for us, but it's a really good framework to measure impact of projects for us, so we can then feed back to the brands we're working with, because ultimately we're a partner, but ultimately we're a supplier that sits in the background, but we're able to feed them that kind of narrative through the lens of the SDGs and say, well, you here took X number of tons out of the ocean of plastic, cleaning it up, and that helped you with this particular SDG. Also, you brought into the circular economy X tons of plastic that will be used again and again and again, and that helps activate this particular SDG and this particular SDG target. So it helps big brands communicate impact in an effective way, I think. So yeah, it's great and a big part of the circular economy, and something that I think certainly on the communication side helps communicate to people that don't know what the circular economy is, I think, as we were just talking about.
No, it's brilliant. That's really helpful. And Pierre, I'm gonna ask you, and I say this in the nicest possible way because others might go, "Oh, you didn't say that about us." But I think Uhu in particular have been one of the poster childs of the circular economy movement over the last few years. How has your product, how has your development led you to become a circular business? Or again, you guys are a B Corp as well, I believe, aren't you?
No, actually, we're not.
You're not.
But yeah, I think like in a way, we started with this quite kind of like visual product. And I think it was a really good way to explain what we do and how we see things, like somewhere in between like fruit and vegetables and kind of like industrial containers. And I think that the fact that it was edible was bringing it back to the things that we know and understand best, which are the food we eat, the things that are kind of like coming out of trees, and so by kind of like staying in that world, people understand a lot easier the concepts of circularity, of biodegradability. We all know how like confusing on purpose biodegradability kind of like variations can become, and how like they're often used for greenwashing, and there's lots of kind of like things that are branding themselves as biodegradable that are actually really far from that. But when you're in the world of kind of like things that you can eat, the question doesn't even kind of like appear. Like if you can eat it, nature can eat it. I think we saw this as like a starting point, and our aspiration is to create like a catalog, a portfolio of different solutions. So that's why we have the box, and we're working on like flexible sachets for like dry goods. And in a way, it's only the beginning of what we can do with some of those more like renewable and sustainable materials like seaweed. And so I think that kind of like was a really good and eye-catchy way to define how circular we want to be, with the things that like nature will be able to kind of like disassemble in a matter of weeks and turn it into the fertilizer for the next plant or the next seaweed. So it's probably the circular economy in its rawest form of like really going back to kind of like nutrients and soil. But yeah, I think that like it was also like it comes with its challenges, because we are not claiming that OHO is the solution for everything. Far from that. And we don't believe in like one solution fits all. It's like impossible. Nature doesn't do things that way. So we're going to need a large variety of different solutions for all of the different applications that we have. And so the goal is to show like that we don't have to stick with the things that have been already invented, but we can create some new ones from scratch.
Brilliant, brilliant. And Pauline, I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm going to ask the panel to think about one of the questions that we've got in the chat. And I'll come to them after I've spoken to you. But panelists, if you can just have a think about what's the one thing you would have done differently that would have got you to this part of your journey more quickly. Have a think about that. And then Pauline, I know that your background is in corporates, and you moved from a corporate into a body that's supporting particularly SMEs. How does circular resonate with the corporates that you used to work with? Is it still something that is, somebody used the term laggard. Some of the industries are lagging behind on the use of this term. What's your experience of the corporate world and circular and how it's being perceived?
That's a good question. I think it's very dependent to which corporate you are, like speaking about, because I think like some of them are, leading the way in, as fast as they can, I would say, because obviously, when you're a big corporate, you have, like a big team, like even if you're, like especially if you're an international company, and you can achieve your business model from one day to another, that's not possible. It needs to be progressive, and some are faster than others, and so I think, yeah, in terms of thinking, I think it's because the consumer and the policy as well, are really like pushing to go in that way. So I think some corporates have started this journey already. But I think what is good is actually when like people like the ones that are in this call, can push the boundaries further, like come up with new ideas that then the corporates can scale this in some ways. And this is I don't think it needs to be like an opposition between entrepreneurial innovators versus like the big corporates that don't move. I don't think it works like that. It's when like people work together, then we can make changes at scale.
I think is absolutely that is partnerships. Personally, I think what we've seen from our presenters already is that you've got innovators now working with corporates in partnership to deliver solutions, whether that's working on new construction, whether it's capturing food waste and making sure that it goes out. All of these organizations that we've heard from today are coming together with big businesses and trying to change them internally. And for me, I think that's one of the most exciting aspects. We've got a couple of other questions on the chat. I'm going to ask Pauline first, and then I'll come to each of you. And hopefully you've been thinking about that question I asked you a minute ago about. Is it all about being a good capitalist? Or are we looking at changing the way that we have to consume as individuals and as organizations? Pauline, have a thought of that. And have any of you heard of the Better Business Act is another point.
I guess the answer is the question, right? So I think I think we need to like recognize that we are in a capitalist world, and this is kind of the starting points. But obviously, we need to like change the way we produce, change the way we consume, and it's good that the private sector does that. And like I think we also need to recognize that the business needs like to generate some form of profit to like pay for the salaries of their team, etc. So I think we need to find a way to have like sustainable like environmentally sustainable and financially sustainable business model, like to progress and to make the circular economy happen.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right. Okay. I'm going to go back to our tour of Circle Line stations in reverse order and come back to the question I asked you to think about a few minutes ago, which is what would you have done differently? And Pierre, I'm going to start with you and then go backwards anti-clockwise around the Circle Line. Pierre.
It's always hard to kind of like imagine parallel universes where things would have gone different. I think like we took a while to go and fundraise, and I think that like the power of kind of like growing the team and getting people aligned on like the vision to actually kind of like go and like do a lot of that kind of like hard work that is needed for things to move forward is like such a game changer. So we really kind of like took our time to kind of like jump in this field, and I think that maybe we would have kind of like saved some time if we had just kind of like embraced it a bit earlier. And I think to the question around like capitalism, I think that like as long as like capitalism starts to account for all of the externalities, it is a very kind of like effective model at like growing things that work quite well in a fast kind of like pace without the kind of like the burden of having to enforce them. Like it's kind of like a very kind of like organic way of growing things that stick. So it has a lot of potential, and I think definitely we see it as a huge agent of kind of like change when it's going to come to deploying some of those new technologies. It can really be like a very effective way. So I think that especially right now with the amount of kind of like capital that is kind of like ready to be deployed towards innovation and new solutions, and people who are very keen to kind of like see some of their kind of like assets deployed on those things that are tracking very closely with like impact KPIs and so on. It's a great time to try to accelerate all of these things.
Brilliant, and thank you, and thank you to Ranjit, who's just put in 3 alternatives to capitalism: donut economics, mission economy, and radical help. really worth looking at all of those if you haven't. Simon, question to you. What would you have done differently? And you might not have done anything differently.
I think the first thing we would have done is not start a live events company just before a global pandemic shut live events down a year or so. But in all seriousness, I think we probably wouldn't have chased brands and companies that weren't 100% into making a difference. I think that was potentially an error we made early on. I mean, we got to work with a lot of wonderful brands that were 100% behind circular economy and sustainability, and that really showed us that when you chase a brand that is more about greenwashing and false narratives, that's a really bad idea, and hopefully those brands won't be around too long. But I think that was it. Being more selective about the people we approach and working with the true change makers, I think would be something we are now doing differently, but we could have avoided in the first place.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Emma, what would you have done differently, if anything, again?
Tricky. Yeah, I was thinking, you know, the three: fast, good, and cheap, and you can only do two of them. I jumped to probably saying, similar to Pierre, maybe we should have fundraised sooner, because I think it's easier to do things well and fast when you've got funds behind you. But actually, I was thinking about this the other day. There's a lot of value to be had in learning the hard way how to do something, and I am glad that we started with £0 and 0 pence and worked out the smartest way to run a good business model. To take time to build relationships, to build these partnerships. They take years. I don't think we could have done things as well if we'd done them either, more quickly or more cheaply. So I'm going to say I'm proud of the pain points, because I think that's where our value has now come from, and I might not do things differently after all. Am I allowed to make a comment on the capitalist question?
Of course you are.
Only because it's a absolute favourite subject of mine, and I think what Library of Things has taught me that I wouldn't have learned otherwise is that we do need to completely rethink capitalism, I think, and rewire what the purpose of a business is, which I love to see Ranjit's message about the mission economy, because one of the things that we've done with Library of Things is to define the company as its purpose before profit is its mission. We're still profit making because I think it's the healthiest way to be long-term sustainable as an organization. But I do think there needs to be a radical shift within capitalism, and particularly the legal structures that we're stuck with, which are actually stuck for an industrialist time, not for a more secular world.
I think that's so powerful and so important. Thank you, Emma. That's great. Emily, the thing that you would do different, if indeed you did.
Yeah, so actually I would echo what Pierre and Emma said, so not really kind of much to add, but I think there's, as Emma said, there's value in kind of starting small, and because for us we focused on getting traction, making just a little bit of profit from the start and kind of reinvesting that profit into growing. When we started, we didn't have any brand. Our first logo costed us £50. We recently did a brand refresh, but until then it was our second logo, which was £300. So there's value in kind of making sure that you build your business in the right way, and actually raising investment early helps recruit great people. And that's one thing that actually we could have done better. Instead of trying to do marketing ourselves when we didn't know anything about marketing, it might have made sense to kind of recruit experts. But there's kind of things that, so I don't know if I would have changed anything, but yes, hindsight is always kind of fun.
Absolutely, hindsight is very lovely to have, but I think it's important to recognize that you can only have hindsight if you've done something well already, because you won't have any hindsight if you failed in the beginning. While I'll take this question to Ehab, but audience, if you could start putting your cameras on, that would be lovely in a second. I've got a little exercise for you in a second. Ehab, over to you. What would you have done differently if it indeed anything?
I think my answer will probably echo a lot of what the other panelists have just said. Two things would have gotten us here quicker. One of them would have been to accept early stage VC investment, and the other one would be to compromise our ethos. And the two things would have not got us to where we are today. They would have got us to a very different place, probably a place that we wouldn't have wanted to go. And we held out for about 4 years before actually taking in any kind of external investment. We were self-funded, we were bootstrapped. We really tried to get as far as we could with very little resources, and did a great job at doing that. And when we did then go for investment, we actually interviewed investor after investor through a very rigorous and long process. It took us about 8 months just to settle on the appropriate investor. But it was really important that there's a very long-term symbiotic relationship being formed with the investor, and that there's extreme alignment. And in terms of compromising our ethos, the main thing I mean about that is we could have easily covered our products in resin and sold them the next day, and they would have made a huge amount of sales, but it would have completely went against what we're all about. And we're at a time of climate crisis where compromises need to be completely eliminated if possible. We really need to be quite radical. And touching on the capitalist question, it's time for radical change. It's time for a new economic system, and there's never been a better time to do that. Coming out of a pandemic where everything has paused, where everyone is questioning every single action they're taking, on an individual and organizational level, it's the perfect time. It's a textbook time for major economic change. So, you know, the person who's put into the chat, the donut economics and mission economy, that's exactly the kind of direction we need to be going. And there are a lot of organizations and a lot of bodies and governments that are actually exploring this in a very serious way. So I think capitalism will be yesterday's story, and it's time for a new economy, maybe one driven by nature.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Ehab. I think that encapsulates very well a lot of what we've been talking about. Now, I did ask everybody to turn their cameras on for two reasons. One, we always like to take a picture of everybody that is with us and to give a little bit of a wave, but also I just want everybody to give a little virtual or a physical clap to all of our presenters, because I think they've been brilliant. They've given us some really excellent insight into how they're actually growing their businesses. And personally, I do believe that all of them are showing us the way of how our community, our world, our environment, our business needs to change so that we're becoming more circular. So a big round of applause, and you can go off mute as well if you want to. So we've got some clapping, but thank you very much to all of our presenters. Excellent work, and good luck for the future. Now, that leaves me with one final task to do, which is to ask Pauline to formally shut Circular Economy Week London. And I'm going to do this in a way so that the team back at base can actually cut this slide and use it for the highlights of the Circular Economy Week. So Pauline, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, David, and thanks a lot for the invite today. We are, well, you know, we are very pleased to work with you and the Circular Economy Club and have you again as a partner this year. So I'm very pleased to be able to formally close this exciting Circular Economy Week today. And I really think the past hour and a half that we have just spent together is really representative of what we have lived during the whole week, you know, with many passionate speakers that deliver real changes in our cities and in London in particular. So the Circular Economy Week, it was 65 events with more than 150 speakers across all sectors, and I think, yeah, once again, today was a great example of the number, the variety of sectors represented, from the construction sector, the food, fashion sector, the packaging sector. And also what was, like, brilliant with this week is that it enables to join, very different kinds of organizations, from small businesses in innovators like today, but also with large corporates, with local authorities, with universities. So, and like this collaboration process, we think is very essential. And just, like to reflect on this week, I've been to a number of events this week, as you can imagine, and I think they all highlighted two key fundamental ideas about circular economy. So I think, and the first one is that circular economy is an absolute necessity. So it's not an option. It's not just about something shiny about having the last the last trendy like a toothbrush made from recycled bamboo. It's really like essential to shift from our linear economy to a circular economy, because there is a climate crisis, as you all know, and as we are heading toward the COP26, we need to acknowledge that circular economy is the only option to tackle all those emissions that are linked with the stuff we consume. And when we usually when we like think about climate, we think about all the energy emissions that we need to tackle. So shifting to renewable electricity, shifting to low carbon transport, shifting to low carbon heating. And while all of these are important, they are actually not the whole picture. And there is like a very interesting study that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation released, I think 2 years ago, showing that all those kind of energy emissions only represent 55% of the whole greenhouse gases emission globally. And all the stuff we consume, like all the emitted emissions from the land use, like where we extract the raw material of the food, and then all the production process account for 45% of those emissions. So we really need to start rethinking the way we consume and keeping the value of the stuff for as long as we can in a circular way. And the second like key ideas that I take from all those events is and from this event in particular is that all the ideas are already there. Like it's incredible how many initiatives there are, and I think it really shows that like circular economy is really taking off, and it's not just a concept anymore. And I know it can be a bit technical. We talked a bit about that, about how it's not relevant like to your friend, for example, when you speak about circular economy, they don't really know what it is, but actually it is about very tangible, practical actions. And actually like everyone acts circular in some ways. If you repair your clothes when they are damaged, if you give your old furniture to your neighbor when you move from your house, well, you act circular. And even myself, I just recently realized I actually live in a circular building. I don't know if you see the window behind me, but it's actually the old window of the stand from the Arsenal Stadium. So I live in a whole refurbished building, that fully shift the way we use this building. And I just realized it was, yeah, of course it's part of the circular economy. So I think it shows that it's really everywhere, and it's a whole kind of system change that we need to take together. And the fact that it's really like local, tangible, means that cities, I think, have a major role to play, because this is where businesses can meet local authorities and also citizens to really make the change locally. So I hope you have enjoyed the Circular Economy Week, and I hope you've been able to get some great ideas to apply in your own organization. And well, we are always welcome to collaborate. So if you have any ideas to collaborate in London, and I would be very happy to work with you. So thank you very much all again for participating in this Circular Economy Week, and I'm really looking forward to working with you in the future. So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Pauline. That's superb, and we can officially say that Circular Economy Week is now finished, but Circular Economy is not. So thank you very much. Thank you all very much to our speakers.